Hi, and welcome to this short video or a series of short videos around childhood anxiety. I'm Jacci Jones. I'm a psychotherapist and coach based in Lancashire in the UK. And I just wanted to introduce myself to you before I get started. So I qualified as a nursery nurse a long time ago. It's probably about 30 years since I did my nursery nurse training. I then started to work out in the community with Stafford College. I've worked in schools, I've worked in special needs schools, I've worked in mainstream schools, breakfast clubs, after school clubs. I then went on to foster. I was a foster carer for 13 years before I started doing my psychotherapy training. So I've got a wide variety of experiences of working with a wide variety of children. So I just wanted to let you know a little bit about my background before I went into talking about childhood anxiety. And as a psychotherapist and coach, I work alongside parents and children in a variety of settings. But I've recently started to be an ambassador for My Mental Health Rocks, which is a wonderful non-profit organisation that goes into schools in lots of areas, or it did before we ended up where we are at the moment. As I'm recording this, we've just gone into another lockdown, our second lockdown in the UK. So I think a lot of us as parents and carers and teachers, frontline workers, are wondering how are we going to get through this. Not only often are we dealing with our own anxiety, but we're seeing behaviour changes in the children that we're caring for. And I think that's why I wanted to do this video and why I was asked to do this short course or series of videos. So bear with me, because I might talk about some things that you think this has got nothing to do with anxiety. I want a quick fix. Give me 10 top tips on how I can, one, see if my child is anxious, and two, what do I do about it? Which is brilliant, and hopefully you will get some of that from these videos. But for me, that's looking downstream. When we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we're feeling stressed and all those things, as adults and children, we're kind of already in the feeling. We're down at the bottom of the stream. So we need something, or we feel that we need something that's going to help us, that's going to get us out of that. And one of the things that I wanted to explore with you today is to look at what happens upstream, to look at what happens before we get to the place where we're feeling anxious, where we're feeling stressed, where we're feeling all these overwhelming thoughts. So in order to do that, I want to talk a little bit about mental health. And what are our thoughts around mental health? What is mental health? And how do we explain and explore that to the little people in our life, to the children? So if you're a parent, a teacher, a carer, do you discuss things like this with the children that you look after or that you have in your life? Children are really good at letting us know when physically there's something wrong with them. Often we can see that. You know, if a child falls over and grazes their knees or cuts themselves, there's an obvious thing that we can see. And, you know, we might put plaster on it, or, you know, take them to the doctors and things like that. But when we're talking about mental health, often it can be the unseen. We don't actually know what's going on a lot of the time. And the children that we're working with don't either, because it's not explored, it's not talked about. Often with children, you know, and adults, when we talk about mental health, they will talk about stress, anxiety, depression, overwhelm, overthinking, all the negative things. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about how I explain this to children and what I see mental health is. So first off, mental health is something that we're born with. We don't acquire it. We don't go to school and suddenly get qualified in mental health. It's something that we're all born with. We're all born with the same amount. I don't feel that people are born with more than other people. It's kind of a standard thing that we have. And it's something like a net that's underneath us that is always there, and it catches us. It's that inner knowing that I'm going to be okay through this. So the more we explore this with our children, and the more that we can talk about our mental health, I think it lessens the impact and the fear and the overthinking when we do end up at the bottom of the stream. As parents and as adults and as children, knowing how it all works can kind of take away some of the pressure and the stress around that. So I talk with children, you know, about what is our mental health, that we're born with it, that we can't lose it. We can't break our mental health. It doesn't suddenly disappear. We can forget that we've got it. We can, when things are overwhelming and there's lots of chaos and things going on for us, or we're thinking a lot, we forget that we've got the ability to be okay in all of this. So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about. We can't do anything to increase our mental health, the level of our mental health, but what we can do is learn more about it and our awareness of what it is. So with children, I talk about resilience and wisdom and the ability to be calm and the ability to have confidence, the ability to have, you know, gratitude and all these things. Those are all part of our mental health. Those are all parts that we can pull on when we need them, as adults and as children. And with children, one of the ways that I explore this with them is to talk about superpowers. I've got a t-shirt on today that says, "What's your superpower?" in a big rainbow. And that's one of the things, is that I describe this to children as having the superpower of resilience and the superpower of calm and the, you know, superpower of having wisdom. And then explore with them, how does that look for you? You know, when were you last resilient? And talk to them about what resilience means. Some people think that resilience is kind of bounce back ability, or that we're strong and we fight through things and strength. Whereas for me, resilience can be just keeping going. Resilience can be knowing when the time is to do something different, that what I'm doing isn't working, so I need to connect with my resilience to, you know, to do something different, which might be scary, which can cause us to be anxious, but that's my resilience inside. Same as creativity. Creativity with children is a wonderful thing to explore with them around mental health, that we can be creative when we're finding solutions. What we might think is the only solution is because it's the only one we know in that moment. So we keep trying to do the same thing over and over. But creativity, or the superpower of creativity that children can use, can be looking outside the box and trying something different. If something's happened and the way that we deal with it is to be angry, you know, then finding a new way of getting through that other than using anger can be showing creativity. You know, it's interesting when you're working with children that they come up with some amazing ideas on, you know, if I wasn't doing that, how could I get through this? What could I do? And the more you start the conversations with children about mental health and get them to just look a little bit about their feelings and emotions. I talk with children about, you know, how were you feeling before you came and you were seeing me? What were you feeling? And they were, oh yeah, I was really scared. I didn't want to come. I didn't think I'd like you. And there's all these thoughts and feelings that go on for them. And then when I say to them, how do you feel now? And they're like, oh, I'm really enjoying it. It's brilliant. You know, you're not what I expected. Then I can go on and talk about how our thoughts create our feelings, and that we build up stories around certain things. If I'm a child and I've stood in the dinner queue, say for example, and I started to feel a bit anxious while I was in that dinner queue, then I start to connect that up, that every time I go to the dinner queue, I'm going to feel a little bit anxious. So we build up stories around certain things. So again, you know, when I'm talking about mental health, I explore these things with the children. You know, these can be quite in-depth concepts as adults that we can learn about and we can explore, but children are really good at picking up on things, especially when we start to get them to engage in their own experiences. Tell me a time when you felt calm, and what was that like? Tell me a time where you felt really confident about what you were doing, you know, and get them to make it into a superhero. You can, you know, if you work in a school, you can use this as a, you know, a lesson or an art class or something. You know, draw what you think resilience is. Give it a colour. What colour would it be if you were talking about resilience, or if you were talking about calm, or if you were talking about creativity. I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, the rainbow is quite a symbol, because there's lots of vibrant colours in it. So when I'm talking about creativity, for me, there's lots of colours in it. Get the children to design something and see how they explore mental health. But the more we talk about mental health and what that is and how we all have access to it, then we can talk about that when they're at the bottom of the stream, when things are starting to impact them, or they're feeling overwhelmed with certain thoughts and feelings. And at the moment, I think fear and anxiety is one of the things that an awful lot of children are starting to express and experience. So I'm going to just do a little recap, and then I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to focus a little bit more on anxiety in young people, and indeed ourselves, and what we can do to help them through that and explore that with them. So talking about mental health, 1, we're all born with it. 2, we can't break it, we can't lose it. What we can do is forget that we've got it. And 3, it's just understanding that at times our state of mind, the way that we feel, it moves and it shifts and it changes from moment to moment. But underneath all of that, we've got the safety net of our mental health, and the ability to be resilient, to be calm, to be creative, to access our wisdom, to find a new way of being. And that's something that we can explore with our children. And they're really up for the quest and to explore that, surprisingly enough. So I shall be back on the next video to talk a little bit more about different feelings and emotions, and anxiety being one of them, and how children can sometimes display this in a classroom or at home. And I shall speak to you soon. Hi, and welcome back to this next video in this little course, or this little training package that's all around mental health, childhood anxiety and things like that. And this next section, it's quite difficult for me sometimes to pin down to what I actually want to get over to you, because being a psychotherapist, there's lots of things that work behind the background that dictate who we are and why we do the things that we do. So again, bear with me, but before I talk specifics, there's a few things that I want to touch on that might surprise you. I've done other courses on this, so I'm sure wherever you're accessing this, you can find other things. But I'm trained in transactional analysis, and one of the theories that goes along with transactional analysis is that we have a life script. And it's kind of like a story that we make up when we're very young, and we live our life as adults by the decisions that we made when we were very young. And surprisingly enough, by the age of 4, we've kind of worked out some things about who we're going to be in the world. How am I going to be? It can depend on our experience in our family. It can depend on the birth position, whether we're the eldest or the youngest or the middle child. It can dictate on any life events that happen while we're quite young. And transactional analysis theory says that by the age of 7, we've kind of played out that, and we've decided that this is who I'm going to be. So the ages of 0 to 7 are quite important for a developing child. So I just want to I just wanted to introduce that concept to you, that, you know, this isn't just for the children that you're working with. This might be something that you're interested in yourself, to work out a little bit about why you do what you do, because that's all what we can do, is to be more aware of our response and our reactions and our thoughts around things. And it's exactly the same for the children. So one of the first things that I wanted to talk a little bit about is something that Pam Levin came up with in I've got a really old book and it's kind of written in the 60s, but I do refer to this an awful lot. You might have heard me talking about it before, but it's the ages and stages. And we all go through these, we recycle them, we're constantly referring back to these as adults. But the ones I wanted to talk about, which does relate to maybe school-age children, is the identity stage, which is the age between 3 and 6, which is when, if you think about it, children are probably in nursery. It's a transition going from nursery into reception class and the lower end of primary school. But in that 3 years, there's an awful lot of normal things psychologically that we went through and that the children go through. So we start to assert our own identity. We start to understand who we are and how we fit into the world. We want to gain lots of information about things. You might find that if you're a teacher, well done, my heart, I respect all teachers and people that work with children. I've done it and I know how difficult that can be. But as a parent, suddenly what I say means nothing. And Miss Briggs in school knows everything. Miss Briggs in school can say exactly the same thing that I've said 10 times over, but doesn't matter what I've said because Miss Briggs says this and this is right. So they're starting to look outside the family for answers to questions that they might have. They're starting to learn about consequences, particularly, when they start to go in school, that there's certain structure around things. There's certain behaviours that are expected, and what happens if I don't stick to the rules, that there's a consequence to certain things. Between the ages of 3 and 6 is also the time that children start to separate out fantasy from reality. It might be a time where children start to tell a few porcupines or to elaborate on the truth, let's say. It's a normal part of child development. Often parents come to me, with quite valid concerns that their children are making up stories or they're not telling the truth or they get mixed up with things. That's quite normal. And often it's how we deal with it, how we handle it. What is a consequence for a child? How do we explain that, this is how we need to do things, and if we don't, then there's a consequence to that behaviour. But learning to separate fantasy and reality, learning to separate, that there are consequences, and to socialise. In amongst all of that, we start to look at ourselves. We've started to separate out from our parents. And looking at ourselves as a young child can be quite scary. So we might start to see the beginnings of a nervous child or an apprehensive child or a child that really isn't ready for starting school. I think I was one of those kids. I kind of hung on to my mum's shirt tails, on my first day of school. And you get the other kids that run in. Why is that? That's because they've made certain decisions. Their upbringing, their thoughts about things have started to form their personality. So I just wanted to explore that a little bit with you. And that's the age between 3 and 6, which is the identity stage. The next stage, which is it's a wide age range. If you think this next one is the skillful and structure stage, and that goes between 6 and 12. So 6 years in a child's life is quite a big area. But we've all been through it and we all survived it. So I don't want you to overthink that. But if I'm looking over here, it's because I've got some things written down, because it is quite a complex structure to follow. So in this age, which is 6 to 12, we're starting to learn new skills and to not be perfect. That is quite a big thing. And without stereotyping, I want to say particularly with girls, because little girls tend to want everything to be just so. And when they can't do something, or when their picture's not right, or their friends is better than theirs, you might find that they start to get quite upset about it, quite anxious, screw things up and throw it in the bin, and it's not good enough and I can't do it, and start to put an awful lot of pressure on themselves. And again, that can start to be the rumblings of overthinking things, putting pressure on themselves, feeling scared of trying new things for fear of failure because it has to be perfect. So that's just, again, it's the things that run in the background that can often cause our children to feel the pressure of anxiety. One of the other things is to learn from our mistakes and to start to experience ourselves being inadequate at certain things. And that can be a big learning curve for all of us, even as adults. When we don't feel adequate, when we feel like we can't do something, we start to get frustrated. We start to fear trying new things. If you look back to, if you're a parent, if you look back to when your children were younger, I've got a grandson who's 2.5, and he is so gung-ho. He doesn't worry if he falls over. He doesn't worry if he goes off the page with his crayon. He just gets up and does it again. It was only 2 weeks ago we actually had to take him to A&E, bless his heart, because he dislocated his elbow on the monkey bars. He's a proper little boy. He was on the monkey bars. He just kind of slowly lowered himself and then said his arm wasn't working. And he just kept looking at it. We took him to A&E. They popped it back in. It was all sorted. It was nothing major. But literally, he came running out of A&E. Wasn't bothered, wasn't thinking, oh, I need to guard my arm in case something happens to it, and I'm never going to go on monkey bars again. He was straight out wanting to climb trees and do what 2.5-year-old little boys do. There was no thinking about the consequences. There was no, oh, what if this happens? Or what if that happens? And I get quite curious about at what point do we start to do the what ifs? And I think a lot of the time it's between the ages of 6 and 12, when we're starting to test our abilities against others, when we're starting to understand that I can't get everything right, to test ideas and values beyond our family. To, we suddenly start to realise that the little bubble that we've been brought up in our family and the small community, is not the big wide world. And that in itself can cause our children to feel apprehensive. Anxiety is a word I feel that's bandied around an awful lot. I'm not sure what anxiety is sometimes, because I'm sure I know I have had periods of anxiety, but I can say that before I sat in front of this video recording this, I was anxious. I'm not sure that I was. I was apprehensive. I was a bit unsure. Before I push the record button on any training videos that I do, I make sure I've got notes. I make sure I'm prepared. I can brush my hair and all those sorts of things. And I can feel something. But whether I would say that I get anxious before I do it, I'm not sure. Because it's understandable. I'm doing something new. I'm doing something different. I'm kind of being quite authentic and putting myself out there, and I'm not sure how that's going to be received at the other end. So it's perfectly natural and perfectly normal for me to feel that way. So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about, was what's normal. What are the ages and stages of our children, and how feeling anxious can be part of that growing up. So what can we do about this? We can respond to what our children are displaying in front of us in lots of ways. We can let them know that it's okay to make mistakes. When they're comparing and contrasting themselves to other children, we can let them know that we're all unique, we're all different. And going back to the earlier video talking about mental health, that you have everything inside you that you need. You might just explore it differently. You might just show it differently, but you are creative. You have the ability to be calm. You have wisdom. You are resilient. You are confident. And that's the bit, again, that's upstream. So when children are starting to question themselves, that's when we can start to sow the seed of what our mental health is, and how sometimes we can feel on top of the world, and then other times it dips slightly, and that's okay. That's part of being a human being, and that's perfectly normal. And just allowing our children to explore and to express themselves. The other thing that I wanted to touch on in this video is about, again, it's another concept in transactional analysis, but what do we see in children when they're experiencing anxiety? And if you're an adult watching this and you have had times of anxiety yourself, I'm sure you can recognize that in yourself, but somebody else might experience it differently. For me, and I do share my own personal experiences on my training, when I get anxious, I get angry. That's what I do. And again, it links into my life script and all those things, which is why I wanted to touch on it, that I was brought up in a family where I was okay to be happy. That was pretty much it. Any other feeling that I expressed, quite rightly, my parents didn't want me to be sad or scared or angry. So they would, say things like, don't be angry. Don't do that. Don't be angry. So the message that I picked up inadvertently from my parents was that I can't show certain feelings. It's okay for me to be happy and bright and joyful and all those wonderful things, but anything else, I can't show it, particularly sadness or fear. So what I learned to do, and what all of us learned to do, is to cover up one feeling with another. And this is where it gets quite difficult to understand when our children are feeling nervous or apprehensive or anxious about things, because the behaviour that they're showing us doesn't always come across as them being scared. So going back to what I said, it's quite stereotypical for boys to be angry when they're feeling anxious or scared, because of the big boys don't cry and all those sorts of things that are stereotypical around boys. They cover up fear with another feeling, which often is anger. And I do that. Rather than being scared, I come out fighting. But I know that about myself. So it's about expressing and exploring these feelings with children. Talking about the different emotions that we go through as human beings, and that they're all perfectly normal. There is nothing wrong with being angry. It's what we do with the anger that can cause problems. There's nothing wrong with being sad. There's nothing wrong with being scared. It's a perfectly normal thing that we experience as human beings, and we can't avoid it. But it's what do we do about that? So those are a few of the things that I thought might be helpful around this little learning couple of videos around childhood anxiety. So it's one of the main things that I say to parents, and if you're a teacher working in a school, you might notice changes in the children that you're working with, particularly with what's going on at the moment. And for me, that's one of the main key points in understanding when our children are starting to feel anxious, is a shift, a change in behaviour. You might find that they're withdrawing, they're getting more quiet. It's, if you've got a quiet child, it doesn't mean that it's automatically anxious. It's when there's a change. You might find that you've got a quiet child that suddenly becomes more talkative, more demanding of your attention. That's a sign that children are fearful or anxious, is when they're needing lots of reassurance, when they're needing to know that what they're doing is okay. It's again that, am I perfect enough? Am I doing a good enough job? Needing to know lots of information about things can be another sign that a child is anxious. When we were fostering, we had some children that didn't need to know anything. They weren't particularly bothered. If I said, come on, we're going out, they'd get in the car and they wouldn't ask any questions. We had other children that wanted to know everything about everything, what we were doing. Where are we going? Why do we need to go? What time will we be back? What are we doing when we get there? Literally, it would be a barrage of questions. That to me is a sign that a child is worried. They're a bit apprehensive. They need more information about what's going to happen. So that can be a sign if you're working in a classroom situation where you've got some children that just need to know the routine. They need to know what's coming next. And we can, as adults, fall into the trap of giving them all that information. Is that the right thing to do? I don't know. I haven't got all the answers. But the way that I think about it is sometimes we can get caught up in that cycle with the child where they're demanding lots of information to make themselves feel safe. We're giving them lots of information that might make them feel safe, but then they want more information, and we kind of get caught in that trap. Sometimes with children, it's about letting them know that it's okay to trust that they will be okay. Even if something happens from the sidelines that they're not expecting, that's the time where we need to build them up. That's the time where we need to let them know that, even if we change the plan, it's okay. You will be okay. One, I'm here to support you through it. And two, that's when your superpower come out. That's when you can show your resilience and your wisdom that you will be okay if something extraordinary happens. So we can use what's going on with the children in front of us in a variety of ways. We can be creative on how we do it. As I said, when I was fostering, sometimes I really had to try and work out what was going on and come up with something new and inventive that was going to, one, help me get through that, and two, help the child. So it's not always about trying to fix them. It's not always about trying to make them feel less anxious. It's not always about trying to, pave the way so that they can do what they want without feeling anxious or overwhelmed at times. They need to understand that they will be resilient. They have everything that they need inside them. They're just not used to using it yet. They're just not aware that they've got it. So sometimes it's okay to see a child, I don't want to say in pain or struggling, but we can help them find their own way. We can ask them, what is it you need from me right now? What can I do that's going to help you? And get them to explore what it is that they need, rather than jumping in straight off and giving them lots of solutions or taking over completely, because often that can disempower them. As an adult, if somebody tries to rescue me, it's disempowering me. I need to learn, as I did as a child, that I will find my way through this. I will maneuver my way through this, but I might need somebody with me to support me. So ask the children, what is it that you need right now? Is there something that I can do that's going to help you? And that, one, gets them out with a feeling, because once we're in that anxious feeling place, our brain is kind of shut down. It's gone walkabout, and it's not the, if we ask them questions, it kind of reignites it, and it takes away from the feeling, and we can get them back in the head and the logic and all those sorts of things. So that's just a few little explorations of what we can do if we feel that we've got a child in our class that's anxious, or that our own children are anxious, or hopefully it's tweaked your interest around maybe if you suffer from anxiety at times. I want to give you permission to explore your own mental health. Start to understand what triggers you. Start to look at, another thing, I'm going off track here, bear with me. Another thing is that if we've suffered from anxiety and we feel that a child, that we're coping with or dealing with is showing signs of anxiety, that can re-trigger us. We can assume that the child is feeling the same way that we do, and that's not the case, because we are all unique. As human beings, we express feelings differently. So when I'm anxious, I get angry. My children are older. My eldest is 33 now. I have got one that's turning 16 next month, so there's a big age gap. But they know when I'm a bit stressed, because I get a bit snappy, and they know to kind of keep the head down. Oh, mum's on one, we just need to leave her. So it's about understanding ourselves as well. When I'm fearful, when I'm sad, how do I express it? What do people see? And just be curious about it. I don't feel that there is a right or a wrong way to do any of this. And as a parent, I know, particularly with my eldest, I probably messed up. I probably did and said the wrong thing at the time. But I can only do what I can do with what I've got available at the moment. So none of what I've said is that you must do it this way. This is the only way to do it. It's not. We're growing, we're exploring, we're learning about our own awareness, particularly with what's going on. So I just want to give you permission to just explore it, be curious. I don't know if you can see the sign behind me, but that's something that I talk an awful lot with clients about, is to just be curious and use full stops. When we're anxious, when we're overwhelmed, when we're stressed, the what ifs and all the thoughts can come thick and fast. I use this a lot with children as well, which is my wonderful snow globe, coming up to that time of year again. And you could use this with your children as well. And it's getting them to understand how our thoughts work, that thoughts are neutral. When we have a thought, I'm hungry, we just do that, I'm hungry. We get something to eat. We don't really overthink it. There's not a lot going on. But if there's something big coming up, like it might be a child that's got a test or an exam in school, it's like, oh, I've got a test tomorrow. Oh my God, I don't know if I've done it right. I've not learnt enough. What if I fail? What if I don't get the highest scores in it? What if? And it's like we're shaking up the snow globe constantly. So there's an awful lot of thinking going on about it. And often what we need to do is to just slow it down. So that's where the using full stops bit comes in. I've got an exam tomorrow. Full stop. and it just slows the chain of thoughts around. So you might find that useful in your own life, and it is a little tip that you can let the children know, is that we can slow our thoughts down. Our thoughts aren't reality. Our thoughts aren't true. It's just a thought. And especially when we're feeling anxious or overwhelmed, understanding that that thought doesn't necessarily have to come true. It's just a thought. So I hope that's helped. Feel free to get in touch if there's anything else that I can help you with. I do like doing these little training videos, and I hope I've not overwhelmed you with too much information. But underlying all of this is, one, we have access to our mental health at any time, all of us. Two, a lot of how we display our feelings and emotions is already laid down quite early on, particularly as adults. But we can allow our children to access their mental health and work things out for themselves with support. We don't need to give them all the answers. We don't need to fix them. Again, you can contact me, and I'm sure that this is available out on the big wide web, but there is something that I did called the Leave approach, that is kind of a structure around helping our children with their self-esteem and mental health. I will put this with the course that you can access because it's free. It's a little ebook, and it talks about the Leave approach, which is listen, empathize, affirmations, validation, and inquiry. And it's just a way of working with children that if they are going through something at the moment, if they're stressed or anxious, overwhelmed, to just listen to them. Don't jump in and presume that we know what's coming next. Just let them talk. To empathize, to empathize with how they are at that moment. I spoke earlier on about my mum saying to me, don't be sad, don't be scared. There wasn't an exploration of why I felt that way. You know, what was going on for me, it was just don't do it. So you know, empathize with them. That must have felt awful for you when that happened. I can understand why you're feeling the way that you are. You know, allow them to feel their own feelings. Affirmation is you know, the praise and recognition for when they're doing things right, when they're using their mental health, when they are being resilient or calming themselves or being creative in finding new ways. You know, praise that part of them. It's not just praise for achieving, it's praise for being, it's praise for being who they are, however they are in that moment. Validation is that it's okay to feel the way that you're feeling. That's absolutely fine. It's not a case of don't feel it. That, you know, we express ourselves in so many different ways as human beings, and that's okay. And then inquiry. If a child has had a period of anxiety or appeared to have, you know, a panic attack, which I have seen in children, you know, painful and sad as it is, they do experience extreme anxiety at times. Is, you know, once it's passed and we've got them through it, or they've got through it, to ask what it is that they need when they feel that way. What is it that you need from me? How can I support you in it? Whatever it is, it might be that they want a hug, it might be that they want a blanket, it might be that they want to cry, it might be that they don't want you to look at them when they're feeling that way. I had a foster child, that would hide behind a door. He needed me to be close, but he didn't want me to see him when he was feeling scared. So just inquire, you know, what is it that you want from me? But I will make sure that handout, that ebook is along with this course, so that you can have a look at that as well. And I hope that's helped you and not befuddled you and confused you any more than maybe what you already were beforehand. But feel free to get in touch, and I can clarify anything if you need to. Other than that, take care, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Hi, I just wanted to pop on and check in with everybody and see how everybody is doing after the course, and to just let you know the different ways that you can get in touch with me if there was anything that you wanted to feedback or ask any questions or need anything clarifying. So you can get in touch with me on the parenting side and the child mental health side. My email address is jackie@parentplus.co.uk. I had to think about that then. You can also contact me on the psychotherapy side of things, and that email is jackie@jaccijones.co.uk. And if you access either one of those websites, everything comes up. All my links for Facebook pages, the free stuff. I also do a free podcast which comes out one a week. That's entitled Living Life Being Human. And the other way that you can work with me, if you wanted to, is that I run a private membership club, which is also called Living Life Being Human. There's a lovely bunch of people in there. We do all sorts of things. I offer all the courses free in that group. We do a live Zoom every Friday at 8:30 UK time, which is brilliant because we just shoot the breeze. People can ask questions in there if they feel comfortable, but often we just put the world to rights in a nice, safe, secure group. What else is there in there? It's off Facebook. It's a private platform that's actually off Facebook, so we don't get bogged down with pop-ups and things, but it works just like a social media platform. You can chat in there, you can ask questions, you can post pictures. There's a forum, there's discussions. It's quite a nice group that's in there. So that's one way that you can connect and work with me, because I understand that accessing private therapy can be quite a financial drain at the moment with everything that's going on. So I'm doing my level best to allow people to get support from me and to access everything that I do for as little as possible, if not free. So yeah, just look on my website, jaccijones.co.uk, and you will find everything. You might be sick of seeing me by the end of this, but I hope you've enjoyed this little course, and feel free to give me some feedback, to ask questions, to give me content for more videos, because I am happy to jump on and answer anything. And hope to see you all very soon. Take care.